It looks very crooked.
Yeah. We're good though? You think we're straight? Is it? You know, I've had a hard time just putting up shelves just in general, and I found that it's actually because my eyes are off-centered. So one eyeball is higher than the other, just like it's. I just didn't. If you cut my face in half, it doesn't match.
Is that true?
Yeah.
Do you think your lack of a symmetrical face has held you back?
I think it's helped me.
In life?
I think it certainly has. Yes, it's most certainly have. But folks, thank you so much for tuning in. This is the Skullet Podcast. Thank you so much, and thank you for our guest over here, the incredible Adam Mamawala. What's up, dude?
Hello. How's it going, everybody? How's it going, fans at home? Good to see you.
Yeah, man. Well, thanks for coming out to Pittsburgh, dude. You're
pleasure.
headlining all weekend. You've been killing it the first night. Very excited to see you again, dude. How you been?
I've been good. It's good to see you. I was saying to you on the ride from the airport that you and I had the last show on Earth before COVID, and it didn't happen. And now here we are, 5 years later.
It's true, man. Yeah, I was excited. Was that in Binghamton? Was that?
I think it was one in Binghamton and one maybe in the Berkshires or something like that.
Yeah.
I can't remember exactly where it was, but yeah.
Yeah, I remember you being really, really sad about it when it went down. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. You and I've known you for years, man.
I was trying to think about how long it's been. I feel like it's probably 10 years at least.
Yeah, I was thinking that this just in the bathroom earlier, but I was just thinking
You think about me in the bathroom a lot?
Constantly. I mean,
Yeah.
I do have I write your name on the mirror, and it comes back and it doesn't make a lot of sense because it's reflected. But
Right, yeah.
I was thinking this because
I have no idea what that meant.
it's it's like red rum,
Sure. Yeah.
Are you confused, Tim? What's going on?
If you write it on the mirror,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
can still read it looking at it.
Listen, I'm dyslexic, dude. So I'm
And
just
your
trying
eyes
to.
are crooked,
And
so-
my eyes are crooked, folks. Look, I'm having a lot of trouble right here, right now. But what I was gonna say
Yes,
when
I'm
I was
sorry.
thinking about you in the bathroom was, maybe when we met. This is the Skullet Podcast, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And I think maybe when we met, I might have actually had hair, hair.
And I had less hair.
You were shaved for
was
a while.
buzzed head guy.
You were a buzzed head guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know what changed it? It was Adam mic at Halyards, that mic that you and I used to do quite often in
Yes.
Brooklyn. And I cannot recall who it was, but there was a comic who was almost fully bald at that point, and he basically scolded me into growing out my hair.
Really?
He was like, I gotta tell you, I don't know you that well, but you've got a great hairline and you are wasting it. And I was like,
Wow.
oh. He's like, yeah, I would. He's like, I would kill for your hairline, and you're
Yeah.
just buzzing your head. He's like, you're not using the beautiful gift that you have.
You do have great hair.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
What? Do you remember who it was?
I can't think. I don't think it was Lance. It could have been Lance Weiss or something like that.
Yeah.
It was someone who was bald or on their way,
Right.
and they wanted to live vicariously through my hairline.
Man, I think back. I know you're a Seinfeld guy. There's the
Yeah.
greatest bald joke of all time has got to be the one where Elaine is dating the guy, doesn't realize that he's that he actually has hair.
Yeah.
And he realizes when he's actually growing out his hair, he's actually losing it. And he talks to George, and he's like, "What do you do?" And he's just like, "Live, man, just live." And I look back on that. It's clearly a Larry David joke, but I'm like, man, as a bald comic, I'm like, it's already been done. That's
Right.
the greatest joke that I could do. It's already been written.
I will say, watching Seinfeld now, knowing so much more about Larry David, it's so fun to be like, that was for sure a Larry joke.
Totally,
Because you can
yeah.
always tell.
Right.
But there's also the episode where George gets the toupee, and then Elaine, you're bald, and throws it out
Yes,
I
totally.
don't like this thing, and here's what I'm doing with it.
Yeah.
I have a joke about going to a bald barber who I trust implicitly, and the whole bit is that that's people think it's weird that I trust a bald man to cut my hair, but on the contrary, that's exactly who I want cutting my hair, is someone who understands the value of hair.
Fair enough. That's actually really nice, dude. Yeah, that is deep.
Yeah,
So what do you think?
I would let you cut my hair.
You would?
Yeah.
I'm not bald, dude. I've cured it, clearly.
I still it's new enough for me to see you without a hat. That it's jarring for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah. You look like a young George Carlin.
Bro, Carlin, by the way, there we go. Put it up there.
There it is. Yeah.
Carlin, he is a Skullet icon there. You know?
He is a Skullet icon.
Let me see. Here we go.
Yeah, fuck that
See,
phone.
Fuck the phone. Look, what would George think of the phones? He would say, fuck your whatever. But,
Yeah.
no one thinks about him in this that is a crazy choice that he made throughout his
sure.
entire career.
Yeah.
He never
I
shaved
mean,
it.
it's like him, the basketball player Chris Kaman.
Yeah.
Those are the only prominent Skullets I can think of.
Well, we always go back to Hulk Hogan. I mean,
We got a couple.
We got a couple, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Stavros
Hulk Hogan, not a big fan of Skullet, love his politics.
Totally. That's good. It's so funny, too. I'm reading Brain Droppings, and he has a whole thing about men and their beard choices.
Okay.
And he's just the whole thing, like, it's not even funny. He's just shouting at people how to, like, shave their beards. He's like, basically people doing it too high up. And for a guy with a Skullet to be calling out people's beards, I mean, look, I'm coming at Carlin way too late. However, actually, I'm reversing that. Carlin's hair is great.
Listen, I want to know, though, because I don't know if you talk about this on the podcast, but you're in a relationship.
Yes.
How does she feel about this look? And did you have it when you met her?
I did not have it, but we spoke about it, and recently I asked her what she thought about it, and she said, I had no idea we would be dating this long.
I appreciate the candor. But that's
Yeah.
also kind of a non-answer to the question.
I don't think she loves it.
Sure.
I got to be honest. And here's the thing. I'm between two worlds, you know. I'm kind of like, you've seen the movie Platoon. You're a well-read
Sure.
film
Yeah.
guy.
Yeah.
So there's two, like, I'm what's his face? Blood, Tiger Blood. I'm,
Charlie Sheen.
I'm Charlie Sheen. Thank you so much.
I like that was your taboo way to circumlocute.
I'm Charlie Sheen, right?
Charlie
and
Sheen,
and
yeah.
of course, in the movie, he has two people that are battling for his soul, right?
Right.
And one of those people tried to kill Spider-Man.
Sure. Willem Dafoe.
Willem Dafoe.
Yeah.
And the other guy has that giant scar on his face.
Wait, who's that person?
In Platoon?
In Platoon.
Let's find out.
Basically, my girlfriend is the Green Goblin, and the guy with the scar on his face, is our producer Tim, right? So I'm being
Okay.
pulled between these two forces.
Tim is pro Skullet.
Tim is clearly pro Skullet.
I mean, it would kind of ruin the podcast if you don't keep having it.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's where I am right now, you know?
Yeah. But Tim, you've got like a man bun situation going on, and you have a good hairline.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, it goes back a little, but it is nice. I think actually I plan on donating my hair because it's down to my shoulders.
Oh, wow.
So before I do that though, I do want to shave a Skullet into it, just to see what it feels like. Maybe for a week.
I recently had to shave my facial hair for something that I was filming, and I had never seen myself with a mustache before, and I was like, I'm gonna see what a mustache looks like
It's a
before I
good
shave
look.
the.
I can already tell.
Like surprisingly, but I do also joke about like looking Mexican, even though I'm not, and it really triples down on that. So, but I do think there's a world where I could. My girlfriend hated it, but she also hates when I'm clean shaven. She says she feels like she's dating a child.
She likes the scruff. Has it always been the
She likes the
scruff,
scruff.
or was it longer at one point?
So when you first, it's never been longer than this. When you first met me, I was like clean shaven and buzzed head. And then I think the combination of growing my hair out and growing facial hair, game changer.
Yeah. How so?
I just think I look a lot better. And I think I have like got a different vibe.
Je ne sais quoi.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The French call a certain, I don't know what.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I'm trying to think too. And was there a specific? It was specific. So Lance Weiss, we're assuming, was the
I
person.
don't think it was him, but let's say, could it be Danny Palmer?
That's another
Now
bald
I'm just
guy.
naming bald comedians, and
Yeah.
they're all gonna, if they watch this, they're gonna be upset.
All bald comedians watch this podcast.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, it just is a thing. You know, they're living vicariously through
You know
me.
what? It was Larry David who said it to me.
Is that
It was Larry,
right?
yeah.
Larry
He
did
said,
it.
Let me ask you something.
Hell yeah, man. Well, thanks again for coming through, dude. We appreciate it. I was gonna ask. I mean, I don't know. I was like, maybe the different hairstyle. I was like, maybe your separation changed it, but I don't think that was it. And then I was thinking, why would I even bring this up? Is
Well,
this
it
gonna be
appears you have.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's where we are.
Yeah. No, we can talk about. We
Okay,
can
yeah.
We can talk about anything.
Well, I do remember when you first started doing that material because you were going through it and you were like, I remember that. I was like, oh shit, here we go. And you said it was, maybe talk through that. What was that like when you're going through, when I first met you, you were married.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess maybe I don't know you as long as whether or not I was married is unclear, but I definitely was like with the person that
You
I
were
eventually
married.
married.
You were a married guy.
Okay,
You were doing
so-
married guy comedy.
All right. So I got married in 2016. So I guess we would have met maybe around that time. And then I got divorced officially in 2020. Like the timing of it was genuinely funny, where like I picked up my judgment of divorce the morning after the night that the NBA stopped. Wow. When like Rudy Gobert touched a bunch of microphones and they're like, we got to shut this thing down.
Holy cow, yeah.
So I like thought I was going to have this single year of being, you know, frivolous and fun. And I was like, no, you're going to live with your parents for 4 months and not be able to hang out with anybody. But yeah, so I got separated in 2019. So I did have like a kind of a window of time where I was like out and about in New York and doing that material. But yeah, I mean, we talked about this a little bit the other day. Like, I think when you're doing stuff that's really vulnerable, like people in the audience feel emboldened to share their own vulnerability with you. And sometimes it can be like oversharing and a little weird, but that it was very nice during that period of time to feel like I was like, I feel like I've always been funny, but it was the first time that I felt like I was, I don't want to say like making a difference because that sounds corny, but like to hear from people after the show or DMing me or whatever and be like, it really helped me deal with something that I'm going through personally, to hear you talk about what you've been going through in a way that's like not angry and not, you know, bitter, but just like talking about what's going on and trying to find like humor and light in it, and like, you know, looking forward in a way that's not, because I was trying to strike that balance of like, I want to be honest about how sad I am in this moment, but it still has to be funny. And I remember when I first started doing that material, it wasn't yet, and I think it was like clear that I was like not in a good headspace. And the worst shows I did, it wasn't even like I would bomb, but like I would do material and I could just feel the crowd like feeling bad for me. And I was like, I want to like figure out how to get out of that and make sure that they know that if I'm choosing to talk about it, I feel that I'm like ready to come out with it. And I'm not like, you don't need to give me that like, oh, like that's a bad feeling when you're on stage.
I know it was like a few years ago, but do you remember if there being a certain thing that kind of like unlocked it where you're like, okay, now it's like, it's giving people the permission to be like, okay, this is funny, or there's some distance to it, or whatever you're feeling comfortable enough?
I think the best way I can answer that is that I think it just took me having a little more distance from it. Like because as comedians, like whatever we're going through in our lives, whether it's like great or the most traumatic thing ever, there's a part of your brain that you can't turn off where you're still like writing jokes about it. Sure. So like as things were going downhill and getting bad, I was like still hoping for the best, but I was also like, I don't know if I had a real list, but I was kind of like making mental notes of things where I'm like, if this goes the wrong way, like I know this is eventually going to be funny to talk about just because there's like so much happening right now. And so I think once I was like a few months away from the worst part of it, and I was starting to feel this renewed energy of like, things are going to be okay. Like life's going to go on. I'm going to go out. I'm going to do comedy. I'm going to like meet people. Once I was not in that headspace anymore, I think even though it was the same material, my like energy and vibe was such that people didn't feel bad for me anymore. And they were like, oh, this is just like a guy who's gone through some stuff, but is not going to like kill himself after the show.
Yeah.
And I think that was the change really.
Because I remember when you were going through it too, and it was almost like you did have a different vibe to you. It was sort of like, it was almost like this isn't true, but it's like Adam's wearing a leather jacket now. You know, it was like,
well,
it was
no, and I
like
think
that
to your point, and you can tell me if you think that this is like accurate. I would assume that when you met me, your perception of me and other comics' perception of me was like, oh, this is like a funny guy who seems like very like weirdly well adjusted for what you would expect a comedian to be. Yeah. Who seems like happy, and he's married, and he seems to have nice parents, and it's like he's the happy guy who's like telling.
You're very put together, I guess.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I think when that all was happening, and my life was falling apart, I think comics really enjoyed it, and I don't mean that to say that they like wished me ill. Right. But I think that so many comics are from these like grew up in horrible circumstances or have all these like personal demons, and I think came across as someone who didn't have those things. And so to all of a sudden see the like happy married guy be going through some really dark stuff and talking about it, I think I became more interesting to other comedians than I had ever been before. And it was the first time that I can remember comics like wanting to be in the back of the room for my set, which is like such a compliment when you're going through it. But I mean, I don't most of the stuff that I do now, I've like left all of that in the past, like kind of the darker stuff that I have. But I mean, I think the darkest like line that I had during that time was that, and this is true, that like during a very dark period, I used to like go to the 9/11 memorial just to cry in public without being judged.
That is hilarious, dude.
You can cry with impunity at the 9/11 memorial.
Wow.
Yeah, if you ever need a good cry.
Well,
I don't know if
all
there's a
right.
version of that in Pittsburgh, somewhere very sad. You can go to like where United 93.
Yeah, we'll take a
Go
road
to
trip out
Shanksville.
there.
Yeah.
I don't know, mattress factory. I'm not sure what's going on over there. That's great, man. I there is something about, and I've never gone through a divorce, but the breakup material, there is a certain kind of like, it's transient, right? So it's like, for me anyway, it's like I've gone through breakups and then I'm like, okay, here we go. This is like 5-6 minutes. I almost get excited about it. And then it becomes this thing of
Yeah.
like, how long ago was this? Why are you still talking about this?
For sure. And I think that became tricky for me because I was incredibly proud of that material, but the fact that when the pandemic happened, I felt like I was like kind of like ratcheting up towards something. I don't know if it would have been like a show at the Fringe Festival or maybe recorded a special that year or whatever it was. But I knew that I wanted to have a record of it. And then when everything opened up again in 2021, at that point I was like in a new relationship. I was in a completely different point in my life. And I still wanted to have a record of that, but I had to kind of learn how to frame it differently, where I was like, I don't have the ability to fake being in a state of mind that I'm not in on stage. Like I just feel inauthentic, and I feel like it comes across that way. So I had to kind of reframe that material from like, this is what I'm going through in this moment and I'm like living in it, to this is something that happened in my past and I'm telling you about it now from the perspective of someone who's like not in that state of mind anymore.
Right.
And I think it still worked, but I do think that there's like a little bit lost from like how visceral it was when I was first doing it.
Right.
So I ended up recording it in it's December of 2021. But it was like right at the end of, it was kind of two chunks of material that I knew were not going to exist for that much longer, where like a big chunk of it was about the divorce. And I was already at that point being like, I don't really want to do this stuff anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And then also stuff about COVID.
I know.
That was so of its time that like that had a very, very short shelf life. And I think people just don't want to hear about it. They don't want to talk about it in the same way almost as like right now. I do think the appetite for anything like Trump or politics related is it's a very tough line to walk, because I think people, regardless of what side you're on, I just think people are like kind of sick of hearing about it. So I'm glad that I recorded it when I did, because I think I would have just like lost it otherwise. Totally.
Yeah, I had a chunk of material that was like that right after the election. It's like it's not as palpable as it was.
Yeah.
It was a semi-fictional thing about dating a Republican, and it would just became a thing of, and then it just was a perfect beginning, middle, and end. I was so proud of it. It was popping so hard. And then I did it. I went to DC right after that weekend, and I was just like, I got to see how it does. I had to do it. And then everyone's like, why'd you do that? Like, I had to fucking know. Okay.
Dude, I was in,
Tim, I had to fucking know.
I was in I did the Arlington Draft House, right outside of DC, the night after the election.
Yeah.
This year. And I did the material that I've been doing, and like people did not want to hear it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, obviously it hits closer to home out there. It's also a thing too, but you know, whatever, you know what I mean? Tim, do you have something to say? I thought so. You're maybe like 3 or 4 minutes ago. You're ready.
I was. I'll say it now, but it's not interesting. We were talking about growing out your hair. That's what you're bringing into the separation thing. Was the hair growth part of the portion of when people started liking the jokes more, where you didn't seem as sad? Where this guy looks really good with that hair.
Oh.
Hey, he's not sad. Look how
No.
good his hair is.
The hair part was not part of it. I had already grown my hair out at that point. But I did. It's funny you mentioned that though, because you weren't at the show last night, right? Or were you?
I was not, no.
Okay. Because I have a joke about how, like, when I was going through my divorce, one of the number one things I heard from people was like, oh man, like that, I'm really sorry to hear that, but like, you're a good looking guy. And the joke is like, oh, that's an interesting way to tell someone, hey, just so you know, it wasn't your face that was the problem. It was who you are as a person.
That's something I've noticed in my life too, of making if you make self-deprecating jokes and you're not at like the most attractive part you've been in your life, like being heavier or skinnier or whatever,
Sure.
You have to be pretty attractive to do self-deprecating a lot, like Ryan Reynolds type stuff, or
Deadpool.
yeah, because it's like you do something like that and you're attractive, people like it. But if you aren't attractive, you seem sad, and you're being self-deprecating, sometimes people are just like, oh, I'm just sad.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's an interesting perspective because I sometimes I've felt that it's like the opposite, where if people perceive you as attractive or confident or whatever it is, and then you're trying to describe yourself as not being that way, they're like, oh, I don't believe that.
Definitely. But I think like if you are actually kind of unattractive and you go to self-deprecating, or if the other side of it, if you are very attractive and you're being extremely cocky about it, people don't like that as well.
Right.
Like if you're unattractive and you're acting like, you're talking about getting all these chicks or stuff, it's almost funnier when it's, you're not actually that super attractive.
That's true. I do think though that there are certain things that like you can and can't talk about based on how you look. And that's like a good example for me. Like I grew up, I was like pretty overweight, and I actually attribute that to like the reason I'm a comedian. When people ask like what the origin story is, I'm like, I'm pretty sure it was like being really overweight and not feeling good about myself during very formative years, and being like, well, if I can make people laugh, they will laugh at what I'm saying and not at me, and I will have gotten out in front of it. But when I still have like weird food issues now, and people like don't want to hear about it, because I think I read as someone who they're like, shut the fuck up. Like, no, you're not, you seem like in shape and like a,
with that hairline, like,
right. Yeah. So yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, I was a real bedwetter for years and years.
Really?
I was, yeah. And but Sarah Silverman already took that one. But
Sure.
I do think there's part of that too, where it's like I grieved this real inner life because I'm just sneaking around and wondering if I smell like piss.
What age range are we talking here?
It stopped maybe in 8th grade. So
That's late. That's tough.
I know, and I remember my pediatrician being like, Dr. Gomez, you've got to stop peeing your pants, and I'll never forget that. And thanks, Doc. That helped out a lot.
What a great piece of advice.
Yeah. So,
did someone really say that to you? Your doctor said that to you?
Dr. Gomez, yeah.
As if that hadn't occurred to you that you should just stop.
I was like,
doing
well,
it?
thanks. Yeah, he did. No, that's true. Yeah.
So did you not go to sleepovers?
I did, and I was frightened. But I remember, and for whatever reason, sleepovers, I wouldn't pee, but I was always very scared that it would happen. But there was one time I went at my cousin's place, and I pissed in the sleeping bag. And then I went
like
to
Fuller
church.
from Home Alone.
I was. He pees the bed. I'm like, I would watch that and be triggered. Thanks, Macaulay Culkin.
Just chugging Diet Pepsi.
But I remember I had to go to church, and we didn't have a change of clothes. So I was just like, dude, do I smell like piss right now?
In the Lord's house?
In the Lord's house, yeah.
You slept in your church clothes?
Something like that. Maybe just the underwear. Yeah. I guess I might have changed.
A tie and a button-up shirt.
It was khakis. Yeah.
But I don't know a lot about bedwetting, but I would assume that there's like a psychosomatic part of it as well. It's almost like I don't want to go too blue on this family podcast, but may I?
Go for it.
Please.
Yeah.
I feel like it's like the little kid version of premature ejaculation.
Totally,
like
yeah.
the
I
more
with that too.
The more you think about it and the
Yeah.
more you're worried about it, the more likely it is to happen. And then it's like this cycle that you can't get out of.
Totally, yeah. So then...
Been way more awkward at church also.
Yeah.
You'd be surprised. But I've noticed it's like, I find myself...
I'm not even going to try to unpack what that could mean.
I think that I eventually just stopped caring and then it went away,
Right.
I had other things to worry about. Like...
I'm going bald and I'm in 9th grade.
Well, that was a low blow.
Wow. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That's fucked up. Tim's mom listens to every episode.
Oh my gosh.
Tim's mom
I'm
raised
so
your
sorry.
kid better. And I know you're still raising your kid, okay? You're still heavily involved with this man. All right? Quite the mama's boy over here. Seriously though, we do appreciate you being one of our listeners. So, thank you so much.
You've raised a fine man.
You just met the guy. But yeah, he's great.
I got a good read for people.
Yeah. Dude, what's been killing? I've noticed. But dude, you've been opening up for Dane Cook lately, man.
I have. Yeah,
dude, congratulations, man.
Thank you so much.
I'm proud of you.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, dude. So tell me how that's been going.
It's done for now, but I got to do 19 dates with him.
Sick.
The first of which was at the Beacon Theater in New York, which is like, just to be on that stage is like truly a mind-blowing experience. I got to like sign the elevator that like everybody has been in.
Wow.
There's like an elevator that's filled with signatures of important and famous people who have been there. So that is the most nervous I've been for a show in, I don't know, a decade.
Yeah.
I was like losing my mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're like the first comic, right? You're hosting the show.
So for that show, I hosted, and then very funny comic Drew Dunn was the feature, and then Dane came out. But also it was the simultaneous thing of like, I'm about to do a show at the Beacon. I'm opening for a guy in Dane Cook who's like, to some degree, the reason I started comedy.
Sure.
Like I think for people of our age group, any comic in their 30s, like Dane was for most of us like a part of the reason that we wanted to do stand up. And for me, like my frame of reference for what stand up even was, like I talked to him a lot, obviously, about it when we were traveling together, but like I think I know like word for word, like beat for beat, every joke of his first few albums, like Harmful If Swallowed and Retaliation. Like I know all of that stuff.
That was like a summer of just like me and my friends and the pickles, like just
exactly.
Like, that was like a wild
and that's
thing,
why I told
man.
him, I was like, I don't know if you, obviously I'm sure he knows like how successful he was, but like people would quote his jokes like quoting Anchorman or Superbad or something.
Sure,
like
yeah.
people that would just, it was like part of the cultural zeitgeist.
Yeah.
And so it was like very, very surreal to work with him. And also I think at the Beacon at the time it was just like a one-off thing, but I also was smart enough to be like, it's one-off thing for now, but like if I do well and I'm a good hang and whatever, like this could lead to more things. And as it turned out, that's exactly what happened. I had a good set. I got to hang with him after, and both of his like kind of standard features were not available for a lot of the tour that he was doing, and so kind of to some degree like fell into my lap. But also, I think it was one of those things where so much of what we do is luck based, but I also think that luck is only as good as one's readiness to capitalize on it. And so it felt like the perfect moment where I'm like, 5 years ago, I think I probably could have handled it also. I want to believe that, but you're never not better than where you were at before, as long as you're still working at it. So it was very gratifying to go on the road and be playing these like unbelievable theaters that are, 100, 110 years old all over the country. And also there's a point in your career where like I feel like I'm doing well, but most of the time, even when I'm headlining a club, there might be some people there to see me, but the majority are not. And you sometimes are like, am I like, you feel like you're in a vacuum where you're like, you're killing in front of 60 people, but you're like, I just feel like this isn't reaching enough of the world. Like obviously there's social media and all that, but all to say, to feel like I'm ready for something and then to night after night be like, yeah, I'm crushing in front of thousands of people in a theater. And I thought that I could do it, but now I'm seeing that I actually can. Yeah. That was really cool. And I also give Dane a lot of credit because he was like the first person to like gas me up, and like he would intro me from backstage, which is a huge, huge help, to like vouch for me preemptively and be like, hey, it's Dane Cook. I'm backstage. I can't wait to get out there. But like before I do, I brought this really funny dude with me. You're going to love him. Like, and so you're walking out immediately with that good energy of people being like, all right, this is someone that Dane has told us we're going to like. And then what was cool about it was, I think the expectations are always kind of like tampered down for what an opener is. Mm-hmm. So as soon as I got like that first big pop within the first couple minutes, you can see everyone settle in and be like, oh, thank God. Like it's not, because there's nothing worse than watching some terrible opener and you just have to kind of like sit there and be polite through it, and as you're waiting for the person that you came to see. So that, and then like when he would come back out, he was very, very gracious in terms of like, I'm so happy to be here, but like we're not going to do anything until we like give it up for Adam one more time. And he would like, he also would incorporate my name into jokes, partially because it was funny, but also just because he knew it was a way for people to like remember me. And after the shows, he always does a meet and greet, and he's like, hey man, like please come to the meet and greet. Like these people want to meet you too, like get into the pictures, all that stuff. So he's awesome. Dude,
that's awesome, dude.
Yeah.
I had so many different questions. I guess I was like, partially was, okay, so you're doing all those dates, right? How many? You did like 17, something like that?
19, yeah.
19, you're doing these theaters. How like tight or loose are you? Are you doing like newer stuff? Are you trying new tags and stuff? Or are you just like, I've got to be bulletproof?
Yeah, it's a great question. The first the first set at the Beacon, that was different for a lot of reasons, which was that, number one, I only had like 6 or 7 minutes.
Okay.
I also was beyond nervous. Like
Yeah.
my girlfriend, we've been together only in a part of my life where like I know what I'm doing already. And that day she's like, I've never seen you like this. Like I was like pacing around. I was very, very much in my head, and it ended up going well. But first couple shows, so that's the first show I did. Then everything after that, I was doing like 20, 22 minutes. And it was just a 2-person show most of the time. So it was like, I go out, I'm basically the host / feature. Mm-hmm. I go out, I do 20 something minutes. I bring Dane out, he closes the show, and that's it. First, probably maybe 2-3 shows, I was very much like, this is my set. These are the jokes I'm going to do. Unless something crazy happens, I'm not diverging from that, which is not really how I do comedy anymore. Like I've always been like a joke first guy, but it's fun to like go on those little tangents if something presents itself.
Right.
For those shows, I was like, no, this is me like proving myself, and I'm going to like stick to the script. But then little by little, and also kind of with Dane's encouragement to some degree, I just got like more and more comfortable with the size of these rooms. I felt more comfortable like riffing a little bit, making, jokes about whatever city we were in, just being looser in general. And I think unfortunately, I just have like audio recordings of it, but I bet if I were to listen to like the first feature set I did and the last one, it's like night and day.
Sure.
How like comfortable I got. And I started like taking some chances too. Nothing crazy, but one of my favorite moments of the like kind of a random thing that happened during the show, it was only like the maybe 3rd or 4th one that I did with him was in Philly. And it was the week that the Phillies got knocked out of the playoffs by the Mets. And we're at a venue in Philadelphia called The Met. Mm-hmm. And there's a guy in like the second row in like full Phillies gear, even though they just got knocked out of the playoffs. And at one point I just kind of like looked at him and I was like, man, I feel horrible for this man in full, like a full Phillies uniform, having to sit here in a venue called The Met on this week. And so there was like kind of a groan from the Philly fans. And then there was a friend of mine at the show who's like a diehard Mets fan. And afterwards I was like, before you turn on me, I just want to say that I do actually have a friend here who's a huge Mets fan. And in the interest of solidarity, since we're in Philadelphia, after the show, I'm going to point him out. We can all beat the shit out of him together. And there was like this huge pop.
Oh, nice.
So there was that. And then there was a moment. I'm trying to think of what it was. Oh, I actually referenced it last night. I think you had left by the time I did it. But I tell this joke about being colorblind, which I am. And when I do it, I usually ask if there's anyone colorblind in the crowd. There's usually like a couple of people. It's not that uncommon. And I ask like what kind of colorblindness they have. And usually it's red, green, which is what you would expect. But I was in Milwaukee and I asked a guy, I was like, what kind of colorblindness do you have? And he goes verbatim. He's like, I got a lot of problems with the browns and blacks. I was like, are we still talking about the same?
Oh, shit.
And then I had already done like the Trump voice. So I just like in the moment just improvised like a lot of browns, a lot of blacks. and like it got such a big pop that Dane's tour manager told me that Dane came like running down the stairs because he thought I had like introed him early.
Oh, fuck.
Which is such a huge compliment that there was like enough of a roar.
Right.
And he's like, what the fuck is going on down there?
Yeah.
So that was really cool.
What's the travel like? Are you flying these places? Are you just driving these places? Like
Mostly flying. I mean, there were some that the first weekend was it was like Rochester, Philly, and Hershey, Pennsylvania. So the Pennsylvania ones I drove to just because it was close enough. But yeah, everything else was flying. It was cool. I mean, like most of the time, because Dane lives in LA, but I would like meet up at whatever the first city was, and then any travel that we did during that weekend, we would just travel together. So we were like in the airport together, and if it was like drivable, we would take a car. But it was also cool to see him like interact with fans and stuff in the airport because it's interesting. Like it's not like walking through the airport with Taylor Swift. Like he can mostly be anonymous, but you couldn't really go anywhere without someone at least coming up to him at some point, and he's like very good about giving people their as long as people aren't like being weird about it.
Yeah,
he'll like be very kind to everybody. So
well, that's sick, man. How are your? I know you're like your parents are like pretty like supportive and stuff. They like they're like super stoked for you.
Yeah, and my dad got to go to the Beacon, and that was really cool.
Awesome.
And I actually. I don't remember at what point in my set you left last night, but I have a joke about that like my parents are so supportive that I know I'm never going to make it because like they believe in me too much, and that's no one successful's origin story. But I told that joke and I got to like tag it with like, my dad is so supportive that he's here right now. And the person working the lights at the Beacon just immediately, I hadn't discussed this with him before, but like immediately understood the assignment and like quickly turned on the house lights.
Yeah.
And I got to like see where my dad was sitting, and he like
Oh my
waved
God.
to everybody. And that was really, really cool. So to have him at that show, unfortunately my mom wasn't able to go to any of them because she was, my sister had just had a kid like 2 days before. So my mom was down in Florida with her, but yeah, he was able to come, and my girlfriend came to a number of the shows. And then what was cool also was that like I have stayed in touch with a lot of people from high school and college and everything, and pretty much every city we went to, I knew at least like someone from some part of my life who was there. So to be able to get those people to come out to shows, and then in Wisconsin, that's where my mom is from. So I've got like a ton of family there. And they got to come out and see me in these theaters in Madison and Milwaukee, and that was like very surreal because all of them have been following what I've been doing from the beginning. So I think it's that thing where they're like, 20 years ago, I say that I want to do this, and I think for most people, they're like, I don't even know what that is. Like, I don't know what that looks like. I don't know what that means. And then a lot of them have seen me at these like little rinky-dinky gigs over the years. So to then see me there, and listen, I'm not stupid. Like, no one's at that theater to see me, but I think my attitude with it was like, I know that no one here is here to see me, or at least most people are not, but like I'm going to do my darndest to make sure that the people who just happen to see me remember me and like will see me when I'm here again.
Totally, man. No, that's awesome, dude. Yeah, well, congratulations, man. It's cool as shit, dude.
Thank you.
And I know like and I'm thinking about like because you started in New York, but you really started like in colleges, right? Like you were doing like college. You're a college comic before you moved to New York, right?
Yeah, and the stink of that took a while to wear off, I have to tell you. I feel like people have like a certain attitude about what they think a college comic is.
What do you mean?
I think people think it's hacky. I think that people think that people who excel in the college market are pandering and doing like low-hanging fruit and whatnot. And I also think that comics are like bitter and shitty sometimes.
Totally,
and I think I had this weird route where I started stand-up when I was in college, like my freshman year of college I started. And then I won, there was like a statewide contest in New Jersey that I won when I was a junior. And that was kind of the moment where I was like, I started to have these thoughts of like, I think there might be something more to this than me just like doing it as a hobby. It also coincided, we're basically the same age, like the economy was collapsing. So like when I graduated from college, I didn't have a lot of good prospects anyway. And it seemed obvious to me that I was going to be broke regardless of what I tried to do. So I was like, well, I might as well be broke doing what I want to do.
Right.
But it's funny, I was talking to Steve Hofstetter about it today. He was one of the people that I like cold emailed.
Get out of here.
It was him, it was Jay Black, and like a couple other people that I sent emails to or contacted in some way. And for whatever reason, I had gotten it in my mind that like, well, I've performed mostly at my own college. So it would stand to reason that I know how to entertain college students, and I'm young myself. So like I should just do colleges, not realizing that most people go to a city, work really hard at getting good at comedy, and then they do that when they're ready to headline. But for me, I was always like pretty business minded and like fairly savvy. I had also majored in communications, which sounds like a bullshit major, but it helped a lot in terms of like learning how to market myself essentially. So back in the days of an actual physical press kit, I put together like a headshot and a DVD of a set from New York and whatever. And I like sent it out to 20 college agencies, and most of them didn't respond. A couple of them got back to me and were like, hey, you're funny, but like you're very green and we're not interested. And there were like one or two people who were like, you know what, we're going to like take a shot. And so I started getting into that NACA circuit, which for the viewers is the National Association of Campus Activities.
There you go.
It was these big, they're not the same anymore, but it was these big conferences where like, if you're a musician or comic or, magician or whoever, you showcase in front of a bunch of college students and college buyers. And then if you do well, theoretically, you get like a bunch of gigs out of that. So what happened was I started having some success in that world very early. Like the first one of those I did was less than a year out of college. So I graduate in May, and then I do my first showcase in March. I'm 22 years old. So I do this showcase. It goes well. I get booked at like 7 or 8 colleges. And so it was like overnight, I went from never having made a cent doing comedy to making like $1,500 for a show.
Yeah.
And when you're that age, it's like you feel like you're a millionaire. I was like, I can't even believe that this. And I think I foolishly had this notion of like, oh, this is it. Like this is how it works. You just start making money immediately. And that's the opposite of how comedy works. So I think for most people, it's like you grind away for years before getting anything, let alone thousands of dollars. So I had already had some success in that world. And then I moved to New York after that. And so that was this weird thing where like I got to New York. I was already pretty much making a living doing stand-up, but I really had not cut my teeth. And so I got to New York. I think immediately some people didn't like me because they were like, who the fuck is this guy who's like somehow making money doing this? We don't even know who he is. I also do think I was like a lot hackier at that time and my act was not as good. And like within the first week of being in New York, I was like, oh, this is a different thing. Like nobody knows me here. Nobody respects me. If anything, if they know that I do colleges, they like either resent it or they think that's, hacky or something. And so I had to really like check my ego a lot and be like, well, I guess I'm going to have to kind of do this backwards and do the work that I arguably should have been doing before doing the colleges now. But I feel like it took years for people to not have that perception of me. Like anytime I would be, even now, like all these years later, I do maybe one college gig a year. There are still people who I haven't seen in a while, and they're like, "Oh, how's the college stuff?"
Oh, really?
Like, I don't know. I haven't done it in 10 years. But
Is there anything? Did anyone ever say anything to you directly about that? Like that you felt like was a specific like dig at you for doing?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll call him out by name because actually I won't, but he has since apologized for it. But there were people who definitely like had an attitude with me, and there was a comic that that you and I both know. I'll tell you who it was later.
Sweet.
But I remember him saying to me at one point, he goes, I could see why you do really well at colleges. Your stuff is very non-threatening.
Oof.
Like, you fucking asshole.
Wow.
And it's just like a great way to like put you in your place. And also it's one of those things where same as if you get a shitty comment on YouTube or Instagram, like when someone just comments you suck, like it doesn't even register. But when someone says something that you have some self-doubt about on your own, those are the ones that really hurt. Because like I don't even think the comment was really wrong.
Right.
But it was just such like a passive aggressive like hey, that's all well and good that you do that, but the reason you're succeeding is because you're a hack. But it was the subtext of it, basically.
Right. Dude, those college gigs are tough, dude.
Very tough. They're tougher now than they were then, I think.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I mean, just I don't know. No, everyone's doing it for the first time in the colleges, right? So it's like their first time producing a show or whatever, and it's like, let's do it in this giant auditorium, and we forgot to market it, and now it's like 12 people in this giant fucking room.
The amount of times that there were shows where I was like, if you had put this in the appropriate space with the appropriate lighting, this could have been good.
Right.
But when you book it in the theater, and you have me, someone who's no one's ever heard of,
right.
You have the 12 student activities kids and their two friends that they cajoled into coming.
Yeah.
And they're spaced out. No one's even asking them to sit in the front.
Yep.
And it's impossible.
I know.
There was a gig I did recently, like maybe 3 years ago. It was me, Steph Tolev, who I think is now actually a pretty big draw, but maybe wasn't quite at the time. And this other comic, Chase Young, I think his name is. So there's the three of us. They had us in their basketball arena. They had an arena show for three comedians that, frankly, very few people had heard of, and certainly not at that college. I am not exaggerating when I say this place probably held 2,000 people. I think there were less than 30 people there. Yeah. And you just feel insane.
Right. No,
it's
totally.
like, what is this? Who thought that this would work?
I don't know, man. And also, I don't know. It's just a tough crowd too.
Here's the thing. I think that as much as that comment hurt me at that time, I think that what he said was not entirely untrue. And I think that the better I have gotten at comedy, the worse I do at colleges. And I think the reason for that is when I was 22, 23, 24, and I was doing material that it wasn't like intentionally hacky, but like I hadn't lived a life. So I didn't really have interesting material because I was essentially a college student myself. So it was like silly, innocuous jokes about being in college and partying and observations about whatever. I remember doing colleges, like doing divorce material, and they didn't know what to do with it.
No.
Because you can't really present that to them in a way. Like, how do you start that? It's like, so you guys have heard, some of your parents are divorced. You know how it goes. Or you'd have to be like, you've had breakups before. Picture that, but with the government involved.
Yeah.
Like, there's no way to really present
Hilarious,
it
dude.
in a way that they understand. So I also think, and I'm saying this as someone who I do not consider myself to be like an edgy comic, college gigs are some of the only times where I'm like, maybe crowds have gotten too woke. It's one of the only times I feel it's like that and Union Hall in New York, where I'm like, I don't like these people, and I feel like they're reacting to setups and they're not even listening to anything that I'm saying, and that really bothers me.
Yeah, no, agreed.
Especially as someone who's like very intentional about the words that I choose. Like, I know that if I'm talking about something that could be like a sensitive subject, I have to be extra careful about the way that I'm talking about it.
Right.
And it bothers me that there's this impulse to like preemptively react to something or like be mad at it before they've even heard where it's going. Mm-hmm. And it's a weird thing, because I feel like if I feel that way, how does somebody feel who like really is pushing boundaries a lot? I feel like it's just wouldn't be possible to do a college gig.
Yeah, I don't know. You got something, Tim?
Like when you moved to New York after starting with colleges,
yeah,
and you were very successful in colleges. You go and you cut your teeth in like clubs, and you're not really getting a good response. Was there like a period where you were just like, I'm gonna stay with colleges, like I don't want to do this, because you're kind of stepping into a place where I'm not gonna make as much money, and people don't like me right now. Were you ever tempted to just go the easy route on that?
I mean, personally, no, but I have seen a lot of comics do that, and there's a lot of people. One of the biggest reasons I wanted to not stay in that world was that I would go to those conferences year after year, and I would see comics who only did that market doing the same exact 10 minutes, and I was like, this is making me fucking sad. This really, like, it made me have that like thing in my stomach where I was like, I don't like this. I don't want to be that. And when I remember when I got to New York, the first mic that I remember doing, it was at that Karma like hookah lounge.
Karma Lounge.
On like First and First.
Yes.
Jay Welch ran the mic. It was a Sunday mic.
Yeah.
And I knew so little about the New York scene and about like what I should do there, that in my mind I was like, no one knows me here, so I should do the best 5 minutes that I have and like impress these people, and then I'll be, carried off on their shoulders. And I went up at a mic, and that place was like depressing already. Mm-hmm. And I did whatever the best 5 minutes was that I had at that time. And it was like something out of a bad TV show or movie where like it was pin drop silent. There was not a laugh. There was not any reaction at all. It was like I was just doing it for no one. Mm-hmm. And I'll never forget how that felt, where I was like, it felt like a prank or something like that, where I was like, I know I've been doing these same jokes for these college kids and even in like the New Jersey scene where I was starting out, and people like them, and now I'm doing this in front of comics, and I feel like they hate me.
Yeah.
And that was the moment. I never had a moment where I was like, I'm just gonna do colleges and I'm not gonna try here. But I remember in that moment being like, fuck these people. Like, they don't know. Like, I've been out performing for real people, and I know what real people laugh at, and they're just being assholes. And I think that's probably partially true. But I think my attitude immediately, as someone who likes to push myself and challenge myself, was like, it is clear that I'm not what these people like. I'm watching them now. I'm just like seeing the kind of material that's working here and the kind of things that people are talking about and like the risks they're taking. And I just like approached it head on of like, I'm going to figure out a way to get these people to respect me. And I feel that in the first year of living in New York, I got better as a comic than I had in the first 5 years of doing it, like by a wide margin. Because I think when you're in that environment, and you know what it's like just through osmosis, you're getting so much better because you're hearing all these creative people, you're hearing all these thoughts, you're hanging with people, you're having these like stimulating conversations. And I always felt like you could look at it one of two ways, right? If you go to New York, there are times where I was at like a bar show or a mic where I'd be sitting in the back and be like, this might be the funniest human being I've ever seen. And some of these people don't even do comedy anymore. But the level of talent in New York was so extreme, especially at that time. Like I'm talking like 2011, 12, 13, where you go to a mic and you're seeing Mark Norman, Sam Morril, Joe List, Gary Veter, Michael Che, Michelle Wolf, like all these people who are millionaires now, and they're all working on their stuff at such a high level where you're like, that feels impossible to like get to where they're at. But I think you either look at that and you say like, well, I'm just never going to get there, so fuck it, I'm just going to stay in my comfort zone. Or the other thing, which is what I tried to do, which is like, I'm going to try to do everything in my power to get up to that level. And even if I don't get to where they're at, I want to like split the difference enough that people don't think I'm some joke.
Fuck yeah, man. Yeah.
That's all. Do you think you said you feel like, you know, even if you're not being edgy, you might be too offensive for colleges now. Mm-hmm. Was your stuff back then when you were doing colleges? Would that stuff work today, or even?
Well, that's what's funny about it is that I think objectively, when I look back at some of the material I used to do, I absolutely could not do it now. Really? There are jokes that I had. It never was anything that's like mean spirited, but there's even a joke that I had that's like on a T-shirt where I'm like, I constantly have this fear of like, if I ever get big enough where people give a shit about trying to ruin me, that there are things that like could be a problem. Huh. And I think society was just different. I really think that doing college gigs, because the bulk of the gigs that I did at colleges was probably like 2011 to 2014, and I just think like the world was different. I remember there are things that for sure I said that I would not say now, and things that if I did say now, I would get probably in trouble at a college, let alone get laughs, and they were working. So I guess maybe the world has just changed. I'm not sure. It
totally has. No, totally. There are certain jokes in my first like 3 years of comedy that I'm like, this was me pushing it, and it was like, and I was rewarded.
Right. Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, then it suddenly shifted, and you're like, oh no, never mind.
Well, here's the problem, right? And I think this is we don't need to talk about this whole thing, but like the Kill Tony orbit, right?
Yeah.
It scares me because I think that it makes young comics think that that's what they need to do. And I think that there's a time and place for dark comedy, and for like, there's stuff that Tony Hinchcliffe has said on roasts and at Kill Tony that I think is very funny. And there's like, Jeselnik is a great example of someone who does stuff that's like really dark and really funny. But the thing is, Jeselnik, someone like that has the craft to do it. When you're 24 and you don't really know how to properly construct a joke, you don't know how to, like, you don't understand the nuance of how to thread that needle where you're talking about something that's dark in a funny way that's like not punching down. And there are jokes that I've heard about 9/11 and about rape and about anything horrible that you could imagine that are brilliant. And there are also things that I've heard that are about like much less controversial topics that are incredibly offensive. And it's usually people who just like don't have the skill to pull it off. And I bring this up because there was a kid, and I say kid literally, like 16 years old, I think, who was at one of Dane's shows. And so he and his mom, I think, were at the meet and greet. And this kid is, Dane very kindly is like taking some time to talk to him and give him some advice and everything. And it came to our attention that this kid was on Kill Tony. And I ended up, not even on purpose, it like came up in my feed and I was like, holy shit, that's the kid, because I remembered his name. He told a joke on Kill Tony that was like a George Floyd joke. And it was like not funny, but it worked in that environment. And it bums me out that someone like that, who seems like very engaged and like very smart and very motivated, is going to think that that's how you're supposed to do comedy. And I don't know. I feel like I got off on a tangent here, but
no, I don't know that there's not like a different sort of channel, I guess, for this is like so many people, like I've done shows where lately they're just like, man, have you ever been on Kill Tony or whatever?
Yeah.
And I'm like, because that is what is comedy to a lot of people, right? And so I don't know. I wonder, there's not like a different sort of like beginner place or something, or like this is like onboarding.
Right.
Like platform, it seems.
Well, I think the other thing about it that I'm very grateful for is that like I am happy that I came up during a time where I could suck privately.
Sure.
Because I think a lot of people now starting out, there's this pressure to like put stuff online. And I'm glad that a lot of the stuff I was doing early on doesn't exist online. Not even because it was offensive, but just because it wasn't good. And so I, like, getting to bomb in New York and having those rough years, I think made me the comedian that I am now. And I'm very glad that it was like, it kind of happened in the shadows. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah. Well, sick, man. Well, I think we're going to wrap up pretty soon. We're going to see if you can get a workout in before the show
it's
tonight.
not happening. No
never
shot.
mind. Fucking never
No
mind.
shot.
Let's do 30 more minutes. I'm kidding. But
I mean, we can. I'm not in a rush, so whatever you want to do.
But no, we appreciate you being on here, man. It's cool to just it's cool to like, you know, having known you for like 10 years, just having done comedy for a while, you see people throughout your life and you're like, oh man, it's just nice to like, you know, see people again and kind of like, you know, recommingle and stuff. So appreciate you coming down to Pittsburgh and stuff. So anyway, this is the Skullet podcast.
Yes.
You know, I did you ever see the movie Love Lies Bleeding?
No.
Ed Harris is in this movie. He's as you know, he's a bald icon, and he had a skullet in this movie, right? There he is right there. And this is sort of what I've been going for.
I want you to know that I am friends with his niece.
What?
Can you get him on the podcast?
Probably not, but I went to high school with a girl named Becky Harris, and her uncle is Ed Harris.
Get out of here, man. I mean, this is a little bit, this whole podcast is leading up to meeting Ed Harris, you know? He's created this movement, and we have people that are constantly reaching out to me in DMs. Constantly is definitely an over-exaggeration, but they're saying that they themselves are thinking about growing a skullet themselves, you know? So it kind of all leads into this movie.
Right.
But anyway, I grew out this hair.
Yeah, that's your future.
That is my future. Yeah. And in the beginning, it was kind of a goof, but as I continue to grow out my hair, I see it more as an act of rebellion.
Sure.
So I'm curious if there's anything in your life that maybe, you know, friends, family, loved ones were like, you know what, Adam, don't do this thing. But, you know, deep down, you're like, you know what, I've got to. So I'm going to ask you, Adam, what is your skullet?
You know, for many years I had what some would consider as objectionable as a skullet. It was called a Samsung Galaxy.
Oh, wow.
And I eventually was bullied into joining the Apple ecosystem. And I feel that for many years I was a staunch, rebellious Android user, and I caved, and I'm not proud of that.
Yeah.
But I think, that's the most recent. But it's a rebellion that I then relinquished. So there's some shame in that.
I mean, not all rebellions last forever. You know what I mean? But if you could go back in time and talk to, you know,
to Android Adam.
Android Adam.
Sounds like a super.
Android Adam.
Sounds like a Radiohead album. Would you say?
He's unable to send pictures and videos.
Green bubbles.
Would you tell him to keep going? I guess what I'm saying is, you know, and I'm going to use this as for me. Do I keep? Do I keep it? Do I? You know? Would you tell? Hold on to the dream?
What I want to know is if you are faced with an ultimatum from your lady.
Yeah.
Says it's me or the skullet.
Yeah.
How are you going to react to that moment?
Well, it's either Willem Dafoe or the guy with the scar, right?
Right.
So,
did we ever figure out who that was? The guy with the scar?
I pulled it up, but it's still up. I didn't see anybody. So
he's a famous actor, right?
The actor has a scar, or the character.
I believe the character has a scar.
Okay.
Which one of these guys is it?
Tom Berenger.
Okay. I feel like I know that guy, and I don't know what I know him from, but he's been in a million things.
I'm sure he did a movie with Val Kilmer at some point.
Oh, yeah. There you go.
He does have a scar.
Yeah,
so
nice.
This is me?
That is you, yeah. The evil one, I guess. Willem Dafoe is sort of like... Willem Dafoe has played Satan, but he's also played Jesus, so that's some range.
He is... like, Willem Dafoe is elite in terms of, like, evil vibe.
Absolutely. Did you see Last Temptation of Christ?
No, but I did see the very strange movie that he was in with Emma Stone and Rami...
What do you think?
Youssef. I thought it was good. It's very strange, but I mean, he's just so good at being creepy. There's something about that, like the creases in his face and just his. He's got like almost like a wolf-like quality to him.
Totally, yeah.
He's
fantastic.
Great. Yeah.
In great shape in his 70s, I think.
Yeah, but I don't want to distract from the point. What would you choose? Sophie's choice.
Sophie's
Skullet
choice.
Or your partner?
Skullet or my partner. You know, this actually came up earlier today.
With her.
With her, yeah. It's constant. It's becoming more and more of a conversation. So, listen, you know, if you enjoy the podcast, you got to tell us, folks, because, you know, things, it's getting the holiday season, you know, New Year's and stuff is coming around. So, you know, listen, I'm I'm like a young Adam right now, and I've got my galaxy and I'm trying to hold on, but my world is telling me, Ronnie, is this seriously a thing? You're going to continue doing that? I got work things and I need to invite you and you're going to slick back your hair, but still it's kind of a ridiculous choice you're making. You know what I mean?
Is there a world where the pod gets so successful and you get enough like Patreon money that you will go to Turkey and get a hair transplant?
This is not the first time this has come up.
Yeah.
And I wonder, because I never respected Brian Urlacher for how he handled his hair transplant.
Sure. Yeah.
A bald man for years, quits the NFL, or he retires. And then through his CTI brain, he decides, let's put some hair on top of this thing. Mm-hmm. And now he seems very happy.
Right.
So,
I mean, Larry David would not have respect for him. He doesn't.
True.
Any bald man who doesn't commit to the baldness.
Right.
But my question really is, assuming that baldness continues, doing what it does.
Yeah.
And it keeps pushing further and further back.
Yeah.
At what point are you just you're gonna have like a full bald head, and then just is the plan to see it through to completion?
Well, we've always talked about on the pod that we're going to do 100 episodes and then I'll shave it. We are on episode 27 now.
Yeah.
It's a slog.
Right.
That is the idea. At the same time, I've done it. This is it. The hair is here, and I don't know. I'm also like, this is like the new reality too.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess what I'm saying is, tune in next week. We'll figure it out.
Smash that like. Smash that like.
Smash that like. And Adam, where can people find you?
You can find me on the internet at all the places. It's just my name. If you can spell my name, I'm sure it'll be in the notes of this episode. But Adam Mamawala on Instagram, on TikTok. I'm not using X so much these days. What are we doing on X?
Who knows, man?
I haven't made it to Blue Sky. But come see me touring. I got a bunch of tour dates next year. That's all on my website, which is just my name, AdamMamawala.com. I've got a mailing list, so if you enjoyed listening to me talk about comedy and want to see me actually do it, you can join the mailing list. And I have 2 albums that are on Spotify and iTunes and all the other places. And I always joke about the fact that I have one album all about getting married, another all about getting divorced. So
love that, dude.
Yin and yang.
What a pro. That's great.
Yeah.
What a great exit to the
What will
spot.
the third one be?
Oh my God, dude. He's a polygamist.
Yeah.
Folks, I feel like we're ending this podcast on a to be continued. This is a real cliffhanger. Will I or won't I shave the head? Will he or won't he join a
You're
sex
not going to
cult?
be able to use these stickers if you shave your head.
You're right. I have so many to sell, so much merch. Folks, this has been the Skullet Podcast. Remember, not all growth is good, but just keep it in the back of your head.
Ooh, I like that.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, right here, right now.